All right, we are live. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Libraries and Weight Rooms podcast. My name is DJ Ligori, and this is the show where we talk about how we can do hard things better through both mental and physical fitness. Today, I want to talk about probably my most favorite topic of all time, which is discipline. And one of the things that I am noticing is a lot of young men, and the only reason that I know it's young men is just because that's the majority of the people that I work with, young men in the ages of 18 to 30, really want to be disciplined. And at first, when I started realizing this trend of these young men wanting to be disciplined, and I was kind of like, I don't blame them. I really like to be disciplined. I asked myself, I'm like, why do we have this fascination with being a disciplined person? Like, what does it really mean? And how can we actively do a better job of being disciplined? And so the first thing that I wanted to hit on when it comes to discipline is, what does it actually mean to be a disciplined person? Well, I think discipline, and I've talked a lot about this before, and I want to just continually reiterate this because I think it's so important. Discipline is one of the loneliest things you'll ever do. Discipline is about the decisions that you make when nobody's there to watch the decision that you make. And so if you want to be a disciplined person, you have to really want this just for yourself. You don't, I recommend not wanting to be a disciplined person so then you look sexy to all of your friends or all of your parents or your relatives or your colleagues, and you're doing it for them, right? To show them that you can make these hard decisions and that you are in this high percentage of the people who are disciplined on this earth. I don't think that's what being disciplined is really about. Disciplined is solely about you and that person in the mirror. It's about waking up at certain times that nobody sees. And I don't say, hey, everybody has to wake up at an early time to be a disciplined person. It's merely about staying consistent to what you say you're going to do. It's about being honest with yourself. And when we start to be more honest with ourselves, I believe that we start to trust ourselves more. And when we start to trust ourselves more, I believe we start to improve our self-image. And one of the things that I'm a firm believer of is that our life will we will never outperform our self-image. So if we think that we're a 6, our life is going to reflect a 6 perspective of that. So if we can increase what we think about ourselves through making disciplined decisions when nobody is watching, I think we're going to have a better life because our life is going to reflect that self-image. So discipline is really about the decisions that we make when nobody is there to watch. And a lot of the times these decisions are unsexy, they're unpopular, they are boring, they're mundane, they are not the things that people want to hear, right? It's, hey, I'm going to have a chicken breast and rice for the 3rd time this week because I'm trying to shed a little bit of fat, right? Or, hey, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. for 5 days in a row and go to the gym and not really feel that motivated the whole time in my drive to the gym. And then once I get to the gym and I'm like barely awake by like 10 minutes into the workout. Like, it's not that cool to really talk about those things, right? And so discipline are these repetitive decisions that we make that over time, Darren Hardy with the compound effect, end up giving us these great results. And so that's why I think a lot of these young men are like, hey, I want to be a more disciplined person, because it's a very strong behavior to possess because it doesn't necessarily have a connection to other people. It's really like, what do you think about yourself when you're by yourself? Well, I believe that you'll think very highly of yourself if you know you made those decisions when nobody was there to watch you, right? And so that's, I think, ultimately what decision is or discipline is. And I've gotten asked by a number of people, well, how do I improve my discipline? And frankly, I don't really know exactly how to improve your discipline. All I can really talk about is the things that I do when I'm faced with the 2 decisions to make, and one decision is going to get me closer towards what I want, yet it's probably the uncomfortable one, and the other decision is going to get me farther away from what I want, and it's probably the easier one. In complete honesty, I have made the easy decision multiple times in my life. And I've also made the uncomfortable decision multiple times in my life. And one of the strategies that I use is this idea of the negative thing happening repetitively, and I can't control it anymore. And letting that pain actually be like a reserve that when I think about it or I touch it or I tap into it, it actually pushes me back into the thing that I want to be consistent with because it's so painful to think about. And the reason that I bring this up is because this past week I was working with a young man and had this completely awesome realization because I walked him through this process. He was trying to work on becoming more consistent with a certain routine and making these disciplined decisions on a morning routine. And basically he had this self-talk in his head that came to the surface when he didn't make these decisions. And the self-talk was very violent and it was very nasty. And so I said, all right, I want you to think about having to look yourself in the mirror every morning you decide not to make the hard decision. And you have to tell yourself that negative self-talk into the mirror, looking yourself in the eye. And he immediately basically said, fuck that. All right. He said, I'm not doing that. It's like, that is too painful, right? That is too embarrassing, right? There's too much agitation involved with that behavior for me to actually want to do that. So now I want us to think about that, all right? That pain became so great that there was an immediate reaction to it. Now, why that's so valuable is because we often will not make a change if it is not painful enough. I've told a story about the two dogs sitting on the porch, right? There's an owner with two dogs. One guy's walking by. He notices that one of the dogs is whimpering. Asks the owner, hey, why is that dog whimpering? The owner says, it's because he's sitting on a nail. The guy says, well, why doesn't he move? And he says, it must not be painful enough. We will not make a change if it is not painful enough. And so often I encourage people to actually think a little bit about pain, because pain is what causes us to actually make changes because we do not want to experience it. We want to experience joy and pleasure and achievement and progress. And so what we did in this session was I basically created this pain reserve, this idea of actually tapping into the negative self-talk or the pain cave. I've heard that term said before, to actually push yourself back into the disciplined decision that you want to make. And so one of our business partner, Positive Intelligence, who's a technology company that we partnered with about 4 years ago that we run a lot of our clients through, has a mental fitness app and all of these things. I've talked a little bit about it, but they use the example of the hot stove, which I'm assuming a lot of us have heard of before, right? If we have a hot stove in front of us and we touch that stove, we immediately typically take our hand off of that stove fairly quickly. Why do we do that? Because the information that was provided to us in the form of pain caused us to move, right? Caused us to remove our hand from it. So that pain is actually very valuable because it's used almost as a trigger or a catalyst to get us to go somewhere else or do something different. So this is one of the strategies that I have used to constantly try to make myself go where I want to go. Where I want to go is not always where I end up actually going. And the best example I can use is just one off the top of my head is when I wake up in the morning and I don't want to go to the gym, the path that I want to go to is going to the gym. The path that I have sometimes chosen, which I don't really want to go to, is going back to bed and now having to restructure my whole day to get a workout in. So using that pain as basically a bank or a reserve to tap into. Now, here's the thing. I want you to imagine that painful thing happening every single day, and you can't control it anymore. So every single day, you have to look yourself in the mirror and have to tell yourself this negative self-talk or judge yourself very violently. What ends up happening is you end up becoming so afraid of that pain, and you want to avoid it so bad that you just end up making the decision because the pain of actually making that decision or doing that thing is not as great as that other painful thing that you would have to do every single day. So I hope this doesn't sound confusing because I'm trying to explain it in the best way that at least I understand it as. basically what we're doing is imagine making the wrong decision every single day and then suffering the consequence every single day, whatever that consequence is, whatever form of pain. I believe that that is actually what then will push you into the disciplined decision. Because the disciplined decision, yes, it might be an uncomfortable decision, yet I believe that the more uncomfortable decisions that we make, the more comfortable of a life we will have. Because then what's going to end up happening is as we continue to start making more of those uncomfortable decisions, that self-image is going to start to increase because we know the decisions that we made were the hard ones, and they were the hard ones that we really didn't need to make, right? We don't have to be disciplined. That's why I say being disciplined is a very lonely thing. It's completely on you, right? So when you made that lonely decision to do the hard thing, you're going to remember that. And then when you keep making that a habit, then your self-image is going to increase because you know the decisions that you're making when nobody is there to watch you to make that decision. All right? So actively think about when you're in that moment of like the V, right? What's the decision I don't want to make that I know is actually going to get me closer towards what I want? What's the decision that I do want to make that's going to get me farther away from what I want? All right? When you're in that space, in that decision, think about that painful thing, the thing that you don't want, continually happening over and over and over again if you make that decision, right? Because what ends up happening is once you make that decision once, it becomes a little bit easier the next time. Then it becomes a little bit easier the next time. And that's where that compounding effect in the wrong way can start to kick in. All right? So I hope that this helps when you're actively trying to think about the disciplined decisions that you want to make in your life, because there's always two ways that you can go, right? The hard decision that gets you closer towards what you want, the easy decision that gets you farther away towards what you want. Use the negative pain of what would happen if you consistently made the easy decision over and over and over again to actually keep you in the mindset of making the hard decision over and over and over again. What this will do over time is this will help improve your self-image because you now know the decisions that you're making when nobody is watching. I hope that made sense. I apologize if it didn't. I'm trying to best explain the strategies that I simply use to help me maintain my discipline, because I think discipline is very important to achieving the things that we want in our lives, because it's going to involve some decisions that we might not want to make. And discipline is how we do that. So, as always, if you guys enjoyed today's episode, always super grateful if you give us a rating, a review, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right. And thank you so much for your time and your energy for tuning in to today's episode. As always, have yourself a great week. Keep doing hard things through both mental and physical fitness. And we'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see you.